Welcome in to the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. I'm Tim McMaster. Joining us on this edition, Steve Cishek, the closer of the Miami Marlins. And this is a chance for you to get FaceTime with some of the biggest names in Major League Baseball. As I said today, it's Steve Cishek. You can get some FaceTime by pressing that red button in the bottom of your screen. Get in line with your webcam, or you can also join us on Twitter. Hashtag Chatting Cage is the way to ask your question. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to start off on Twitter, Steve, and Alex J. Lark wants to know, do you love playing spring training so close to your home park down there in Florida?
Yeah, it's great. You know, I just moved to Jupiter 2 years ago. Last year was actually my first off season, so if I wanted to, I could just take a bike, ride it to the park. It's beautiful out there. You know, such a nice town, perfect weather in the spring, and it was great.
I think a lot of teams have a practical joker amongst their bullpen. Do the Marlins have a guy that kind of keeps things light in those early innings?
Yes, it's collectively, there's some guys, you know, Marmol's, he's like quietly hilarious. Like he'll just throw in some one-liners, and then you got Ramos. He's just the things he comes up with. I mean, I don't know where he gets it from, and we just have a good time out there early on.
Steve, you have a guy on your team that hits blasts as far as home runs go, and Giancarlo Stanton. And as we go back to Twitter, Drew Wabeck wants to know, how would you pitch Giancarlo Stanton if you had to face him?
Wow. I mean, I try to stay away from him as much as possible. So that being said, I'd probably throw him all off-speed pitches. If I threw him a fastball, it'd have to be at his head just to get him off the plate and scare him a little bit, because he scares the living daylights out of everyone else he faces.
It's got to be a lot of fun for you guys out there in the bullpen, just waiting for his home runs to kind of to come out and find you guys out there in the outfield. All right, we're going to be joined now by another fan. If you can just tell us your name, where you're from, and ask your question for Steve.
All right, I'm Alec. I'm from Boca Raton, Florida. And my question is, what got you to throw from your crazy slot? And have you seen that replay in slow-mo of your arm slot and basically all your ligaments going in opposite directions?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably why my arm feels the way it does every day. But no, I don't really know where I got it from. When I was in high school, I was a Red Sox fan. I watched Derek Lowe pitch a lot and Pedro Martinez. So when I throw the windup, I try to keep the same momentum or rhythm as Pedro with Derek Lowe's arm slot. So in my head, I'm thinking I'm throwing like Derek Lowe. I didn't realize my arm slot was a little lower. And as things went on, my arm slot just kept getting lower and lower. And the crazy thing is when I throw a baseball, football, or anything, I feel like I'm throwing straight over the top like everyone else. But when you see it on video, it's obviously not the case.
Might actually be better for your
sidearm.
I mean, everything I do is sidearm. Like I said, it's my natural arm slot. I feel like I'm throwing straight over the top like everyone else. I don't know any better.
Steve, you mentioned growing up a Red Sox fan. You are from Massachusetts. Bergie377 on Twitter wants to know, was it hard growing up playing baseball in a cold weather state?
You know, you don't know anything else really, so you get used to it. When, you know, high school season starts, sometimes there's snow on the ground, you know, there's a dusting, whatever. You know, any way you can get a game in is what we went through, and you get used to the cold weather. And then when the summer hits, it's blazing hot. You know, we play tournaments in like Connecticut, Rhode Island, you know, stuff like places like that where it can get real hot in the summer. Even in Boston, it does. So, you know, you just kind of have to adjust to get used to it. And until I went to Florida, I thought it was just, you know, typical.
And then you get down there in Florida, and all those other guys have been playing all year round. All right, you were watching the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. Your chance to get FaceTime with Major League players today. That's Steve Cishek, and we have another fan waiting to ask a question. If you can just tell us your name, where you're from, and ask your question for Steve.
Hi, I'm Michelle from Coral Gables, and I was just wondering, do you have any special memories from your draft day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I went to a small school, so when I went to school, I didn't expect to get drafted. I was just there for education and happened to pay a little scholarship money. So when draft day came around, we had friends, family, neighbors over, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, I'm married to, and it was just an exciting day. People came over, we had food, just hung out, and it was the first year that they had the draft on television. So we watched it. I knew I wasn't going to be a first rounder, but we wanted to watch it anyways, just take in the whole experience. And when my name came up on the board with the Marlins, you know, we just all just jumped through the roof, ran outside, got on the phone, and, you know, started to get things situated.
All right, this is the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. We're going to go back to Twitter now, Steve. And Manny Raposo wants to know, who has given you the best piece of advice in your life? So that doesn't necessarily have to be baseball in your life.
You know, as a Christian, I had a friend I had a friend in college before I was a Christian, and they happened to, introduce, Jesus into my life, and that's where, I gave my soul and my heart to Jesus, and that was definitely the best advice I've ever gotten, and now I live freely, and it allows me, in my baseball aspect, since we're talking about baseball, to play a lot more free and to give it all to God and everything I do, and that was the best advice I've ever given or ever received was, to accept Christ into my heart.
And we're going to stay on Twitter now, Steve, and I think this kind of goes back to the cold weather thing and growing up in New England. Mrs. Beachley wants to know, did you play other sports besides baseball growing up?
Oh, yeah. When I was a kid, I played everything. Anything you could, put out there, I tried to play. Even street hockey, I came from a hockey town. Played street hockey with my friends, football. I played Pop Warner. Basketball was my second love. Obviously baseball, and we were playing wiffle ball in the backyard, soccer. So when I got to like junior high school, I had to focus. My dad wanted me to buckle down on only 2 sports, so I chose basketball and baseball. And from there on, I've worked on basketball in the winter and baseball during the spring and summer. So, I played a lot of sports growing up, and I think it helped out, where I'm at today.
I think even pitchers nowadays, we see if they play other sports, they really get that athletic build, and it helps you on the mound for sure. All right, we're going to welcome in another fan right now. If you can just tell us your name, where you're from, and ask your question for Steve.
Hey, I'm Jack. I'm from Reston, Virginia, and I kind of have 2 questions. One, in 2011, I sat behind the bullpen in Wrigley, and you signed a ball for me, and you kind of rolled it back to me at the end of the game. Do you remember that? And what's your favorite road ballpark to pitch?
My favorite road ballpark? I don't know. We sign a lot of autographs for people. I try my best to get as many autographs out there as I can if people are asking. Did you happen to be the one with the hump day sign? Because that was one autograph I signed at Wrigley, and it was absolutely hilarious. There's a adult and a kid, and the kid came down with a hump day sign there. But in my favorite ballpark, it's tough. Wrigley's cool. I'd say San Francisco is one of my favorite places to play because they pack the house. The fans are crazy. You feel like they're right on top of you. They're yelling at you in the bullpen. So when you go in the game and Lord willing, you get the job done, they go silent, and there's nothing like that nice, beautiful silence at the end of the ball game.
All right, we're going to go back to Twitter now, Steve. And you mentioned going to college basically and playing baseball to get some help with as far as a scholarship and help with tuition. But Boomer479 wants to know, was there a point along the way when you kind of knew that you had what it took to play professionally?
Yeah, it was crazy. When I went to college, I was throwing, 84 tops. I think I hit 86 one time on a gun my freshman year. In my first college game ever, I didn't record a single out, and I came out of the game, bases loaded, no outs, huge situation, and my pitching coach, congratulated me. I was like, are you kidding me? For what? Like, you hit 92 on the gun. Sure enough, the next outing was 94, and this literally just came out of nowhere. So once things started shaping up and I was throwing consistently hard like that and from my arm slot, people started showing up to games, and behold, junior year, it became a reality. Teams are sending in questionnaires for you to fill out. I was doing eye tests, personality tests, all that stuff, and it was just like a whirlwind. Like, it just all came out of nowhere. It was incredible. So yeah, I kind of had that feeling from freshman year on to junior year.
This is the Edward Jones chatting cage, and Steve Cishek. I knew I was going to do that at some point, Steve. Steve Cishek, nice enough to join us in the cage today, and now we're joined by another fan on the line. If you can tell us what your name is, where you're from, and ask your question for Steve.
My name is Azaria, and I live in Florida. My question was, who did you look up to when you were a kid?
Ooh, when I was a kid, I looked up to my parents, but a lot when I was a kid. They worked hard for everything they got. But from an athletic standpoint, my favorite player, being a Red Sox fan, was Nomar Garcia-Parra. So we all used to pretend we were him when we played wiffle ball in the backyard, and we'd adjust our batting gloves like he used to do it. But as I got older, I kind of went to the dark side, and really started following Mariano Rivera. I just appreciated his work on and off the field. He just seemed like a class act and someone that, I strive to be like someday.
All right, Steve, we're going to go back to Twitter now, and Morty JP wants to know, what's your favorite baseball movie?
Oh, man, that's a great question. Early on, I'd say League of Their Own, but now I think For Love of the Game. I just like how they, I mean, it's a love story, but the baseball aspect of the movie just seems so realistic and dead on. Like, it's probably one of the better, baseball movies when they cut to the scene where they're actually playing. But obviously Bull Durham's hilarious, Major League's hilarious, Field of Dreams is phenomenal. We were talking about that today, but I'd say For Love of the Game is probably my favorite baseball movie.
No fever pitch for the Red Sox?
Unfortunately, Fever Pitch wasn't up there, but it was still good. It was still good.
All right, that is going to do it for us, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. God bless.
All right, that is Steve Cishek stepping into the Edward Jones chatting cage, and that is going to do it for this edition. I'm Tim McMaster. Thanks a lot for joining us here on the Edward Jones chatting cage.